Listen, today we are going to completely subvert literally everything we've been conditioned to believe about hustle culture and this endless, utterly exhausting pursuit of positivity. I mean, think about it. We are constantly bombarded with messages telling us to be happier, be healthier, be richer, be smarter, and just be better than everyone else. But what if all that relentless striving is actually the very thing making us absolutely miserable? Well, in today's Explainer, we're unpacking a radically counterintuitive approach to living a good life. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to be looking at your own goals in an entirely different light. So let's just jump right in. To kick things off, consider the really jarring story of a guy named Charles Bukowski. If you were to walk through a cemetery and read the epitaph on his tombstone, you wouldn't see some inspiring, uplifting message about chasing your dreams. No, you'd just see two words: don't try. Now, Bukowski was an alcoholic, a chronic gambler, a womanizer, and a deadbeat post office worker. For decades, his writing was rejected by basically everyone. It was only when he hit 50 years old that an editor at a tiny publishing house finally took a chance on him. So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Bukowski's ultimate success as a best-selling novelist didn't come from some relentless, winning attitude or that typical toxic positivity we see everywhere. It stemmed from the fact that he knew he was a loser. He accepted it, and he wrote unflinchingly and honestly about it. He never ever tried to be anything other than exactly what he was. And that story is the perfect foundation for a massive counter-narrative to the traditional self-help industry, which was laid out by Mark Manson in his wildly popular book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Manson points out something so fascinating. Conventional life advice actually fixates almost entirely on what you lack. Think about it for a second. If you're standing in front of your bathroom mirror repeating daily affirmations that you're beautiful, well, you're only doing that because at a baseline level, you feel unbeautiful, right? You buy books on how to be successful because you fundamentally feel you aren't successful enough already. This relentless fixation on the positive is literally just serving as a constant reminder of what we are not. Okay, I want to pause here for a quick second. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. Have you ever felt the mounting, suffocating anxiety of modern life just kind of creeping in, and then suddenly you feel bad just for feeling bad? You look around and wonder, why can't I just be happy like everyone else seems to be? Manson perfectly described this spiral as the feedback loop from hell, and man, is it accurate. It goes a little something like this. First, you get anxious about something in your life. Then that anxiety starts to cripple you, and you start wondering why you're so anxious. Now you're becoming anxious about being anxious. And then to top it all off, you get angry at yourself for getting anxious in the first place. We literally spiral by feeling guilty about feeling guilty or getting angry about being angry. It's wild. The miracle of human consciousness allows us to have thoughts about our thoughts, but society has conditioned us to believe that having negative experiences is totally unacceptable. And that has created a borderline epidemic of self-loathing. Let's put this into perspective with a number: 350. Back in our grandfather's day, if they felt like garbage, they just think, well, I feel terrible today. I guess that's just life. Back to shoveling hay. But today, today is entirely different. If you feel bad for even 5 minutes, you open your phone and you're immediately bombarded with roughly 350 daily images of totally ecstatic, happy people on social media, driving Ferraris and living these seemingly flawless lives. It is mathematically impossible not to feel like there is something fundamentally broken inside of you. The crisis we're facing today isn't material at all, it's existential. Which brings us to a really profound philosophical concept from Alan Watts known as the backwards law. Basically, it states that wanting a positive experience is fundamentally a negative experience, whereas accepting a negative experience is a positive experience. I know, it's a complete paradox that totally forces you to unpretzel your brain. But think about it. The more you desperately want to be rich, the poorer you feel regardless of how much money you actually make. The more you want to be happy, the lonelier you become. But surmounting negative experiences, like the burning pain you endure in the gym, or the crushing failures that teach you real business acumen, those actually generate positive results. Trying to escape the negative only backfires, every single time. So let's take a quick mental breather and ask the real question here. What does it actually mean to not care? Or in Manson's terminology, to not give a fuck? Because it is super easy to misinterpret this as a free license to just be a completely apathetic jerk to everyone around you. Actually, by definition, a person who finds absolutely no emotion or meaning in anything isn't some enlightened Zen guru. They're a psychopath. And we definitely aren't aiming to emulate a psychopath here. The true art of this concept does not mean becoming an emotionless, apathetic couch potato hiding from the world in a pit of gray indifference. In fact, indifferent people are usually only hiding because they care way too much about what everyone else thinks of them.
So how do we actually pull this off? Well, Manson offers what he calls the 3 subtleties to clarify exactly what it means to effectively prioritize your thoughts and your values. Let's walk through these one by one, because this is where all this theory becomes deeply, deeply actionable for us.
Subtlety number 1 is that it's not about indifference. It's about being comfortable with being different. Manson shares this great anecdote about his own mother getting scammed out of a large chunk of money by a close friend. Now, he wasn't indifferent to this. He didn't just shrug his shoulders and say, whatever. No, he was furious. He lawyered up and was totally ready to go after the guy. Why? Because protecting his family was his true value. He didn't care about the adversity or the potential awkwardness or being seen as the difficult guy, because he was focused on something deeply important. He was willing to be a total pariah for the sake of his core values. And that leads us seamlessly right into subtlety number 2. You must care about something more important than adversity. Imagine you're at the grocery store and you see an elderly lady absolutely erupting at a 17-year-old cashier over like a 30-cent expired coupon. Why on earth does she care so much about 30 cents? Well, Manson argues it's because she probably doesn't have anything better to do with her days. If you find yourself constantly losing your mind over trivial things, like the TV remote batteries dying or some minor perceived slight from a coworker, it's highly likely you simply don't have anything more meaningful in your life to care about. Because when a person has no real problems, the human mind just automatically invents them.
Finally, we have subtlety number 3. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to care about. Have you ever watched a toddler just cry their absolute eyes out because their hat is the wrong shade of blue? When we're young, everything is brand new, so we care intensely about everything. But as we age, we gain experience. We realize most things have very little lasting impact on our lives. True maturity is the realization that we have a strictly limited amount of energy. We have to become selective. We literally must reserve our ever-dwindling energy for the truly worthy things in our lives, our families, our true friends, our genuine purpose.
Now, at this point, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but isn't the whole point of life to achieve the American dream, like to find a way to build a flawless life completely free from any suffering? It's a totally fair question, but let's go ahead and challenge that narrative. To challenge it, let's look at a story that's thousands of years old. It's the subversive hero's journey of a young prince who would eventually become the Buddha. His father literally built high walls around the palace to ensure the prince never experienced a single moment of suffering. He had absolutely perfect luxury, but it felt entirely empty and valueless. So the prince actually escaped, saw poverty and disease for the very first time, and decided to swing to the exact opposite extreme. He gave up everything. He lived in the dirt, torturing himself, eating a single nut a day. But after years of this, he had a massive realization. Pursuing suffering was just as meaningless as avoiding it. That young prince's realization ties right back to the absolute core lesson of today's explainer, what Manson calls practical enlightenment. The goal in life isn't to alleviate your problems entirely. It's not about finding some magic pain-free existence, because pain is just an inextricable thread in the fabric of life. Practical enlightenment is simply becoming comfortable with the inevitable suffering of life. It's about turning your terrible problems into slightly better problems. And most importantly, it's about actively finding the struggles that you actually enjoy dealing with. I want to wrap up this explainer with a really profound, heavy-hitting thought from the philosopher Albert Camus. He said, "You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. So stop striving for the illusion of a perfect, painless existence. Stop giving your limited energy to the superficial noise. Instead, knowing full well that your energy is finite, ask yourself this: what highly specific, deeply meaningful struggle will you consciously choose to care about today?"